Hello my friends, how's it going? Welcome to D4, D&D Deep Dive. This is the show where each week we take a deep dive into one, sometimes two, specific character builds for Dungeons & Dragons 5e. We crunch numbers about them, we theorycraft about them, not so that I can tell you the right way or the best way to play this character, but to explore one potential way for building and playing a character in the hopes of creating something that's both really powerful, but also really fun to play. So if you enjoy creating characters for D&D almost as much as you enjoy playing the actual game itself, or if you're just looking for tips or ideas on building a character that you're thinking about creating, then welcome home. This is where you belong, and I am so glad you're here. Thank you for being here. My name is Colby. Really quick, if you would be interested in getting a cheat sheet written step-by-step guide on how to recreate this character so that you don't have to go back and rewatch the video or take notes, or if you're just interested in supporting the channel a little bit and helping me create more and better content, then I would appreciate it if you would consider joining as a member. There's a little join button down there. For $2 a month, you get access to the library of write-ups, these cheat sheets that I create for every single build, and my undying gratitude. Man, my undying gratitude is cheap. Huge shout out and thank you to all of my channel members, and for everybody else, you are also greatly appreciated. Thanks for being here. Just watching and liking and subscribing especially, and commenting are all great ways to help support the channel. So thank you too. All right. So, as many of you know, I love building Nova damage characters, burst damage characters, right? Being able to just blow up a single enemy or three in one huge round of combat really does wonders for turning the tides of the combat in your party's favor. But here's the problem with how I sometimes, maybe even often, build Nova characters, especially if there's a paladin involved. I'll make some crazy thing that can attack a billion times and then say, now, assuming that we smite on every single one of those attacks, then you do a zillion damage. But man, spell slots are precious commodities in D&D 5e, especially if you're taking some levels in a half-caster class like Paladin, and maybe some fighter levels for Action Surge, as I often do, right? Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could build a fantastic smite-based Nova damage character who only used one single spell slot during their Nova round? Think of how freeing that would be for them to do all the other fun, crazy, amazing, powerful things that spellcasters get to do in D&D 5e on their rounds when they are not going Nova. So yeah, today, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to try to make the equivalent of like One Punch Man. Not really One Punch Man, but that's sort of an inspiration. As many of you know, something else that I really love to do is build characters that, in the name of character concept or story, has like self-imposed limitations or restrictions, right? So this is the self-imposed limitation today. Try to do as much damage as possible with just one single attack. Not only will this have the benefit of preserving your spell slots to do lots of other cool, fun things in combat, but I think it makes for a really great character concept. This character, there's something about how they function, like maybe they have some sort of mental block where they struggle to draw upon their divine and or arcane magics unless they're like really angry or under great duress, like Nynaeve in the Wheel of Time. Maybe the power that they draw upon can't be used except every so often, as it needs time to build up within them for whatever reason. Perhaps their deity in this case is trying to teach them about like the dangers of wanton violence and thus not granting them destructive power more than every so often, forcing them to look to other solutions more often than not. The story reasons for building a character this way are interesting and almost limitless, but yeah, regardless of what your reason is, this is how we're building this character. No more than one attack per turn, with the intent to have a big, huge Nova attack once in a while. But outside of that big, huge burst damage attack, they're going to be filling a little bit more of a support and or controller utility role. This, of course, gives us the added benefit of playing a character who brings a lot of diversity to how they play in combat. And yeah, it's pretty much my favorite way to build support character. I can heal and buff you, but every once in a while, I leave a crater where the enemy used to be. That makes my allies go, I'm not so sure about our healer. They can get a little unhinged sometimes, right? Did you see what they did to that troll? So yeah, this character is going to be a ridiculous hot mess of a multi-class aberration that is artificially restrained and hits like a ton of bricks. I'm going back to my roots. And I'm not even going to try to come up with an in-game story reason for the 5 different classes that we're going to end up with by level 17. And by the way, if that right there is a huge turnoff for you, don't worry, we can get to the core with 3. But yeah, instead of coming up with kind of like story reasons for every different multi-class dip we take, let's just go with the old reliable. This class is a custom class of my own design that happens to dip into a bunch of different official classes throughout their character progression. It's not a Paladin X, Sorcerer Y, other classes Z, A, and B. Instead, this character class is called the Inquisitor or the Justicar. As for me, I will lovingly refer to them as Episode 121, The One-Hit Wonder. Huge thanks to my good friend Randall Hampton for creating the artwork for this character concept that I sent him this week. Many of you have noticed the absence of his artwork in the last couple of episodes. He was super busy with PAX Unplugged the last couple of weeks, but I'm really happy to have him back this week. I love the work that he does. I know that you do too. He's an amazing artist. If you want to follow him on social media or potentially reach out to him to see if you can commission him to create some art for your character or your parties even, I will, as always, put links in the video description on how to do so. Thanks, Randall. Also, before we jump into the build, let me read you guys the description for this character that the team over at dScryb has come up with, since they are, once again, the sponsor for the video this week. His breath hangs before his barbute helm like the fog of a haunted morning, his eyes shining through the mist like moonlight through clouds. The blade of a greatsword, glinting and wicked as an executioner's axe, is balanced on his shoulder with one hand holding it steady. He raises his gauntlet with deadly calm, pointing his free hand toward his foe. Diaphanous threads of pale magic weave about his target. The quiet shatters as he surges forward in a clanking lurch. Hilt in both hands, he heaves the massive weapon to bring it down upon his quarry. He strikes true, the spectral threads warbling about the target, before expanding into a luminous aura. The warden cries out, an unearthly yell, and the heavens answer. A ray of light beams down upon the target, and the aura explodes, sending a sonic boom resounding through air and earth. Man, it's been a minute since I've had dScryb as a sponsor, and I miss them. They are so good. So yeah, for those who don't know, dScryb is a fantastic tool that players and DMs alike can use to get professionally written descriptions of almost anything you can imagine wanting a description for in a D&D game. Settings, characters, attacks, dialogue, spells, magic items, etc., etc. And if it hasn't already been written, you can request that they create something for you specifically with the right subscription level at least. But even with a free account, you can get access to thousands and thousands of searchable descriptions available in their massive library, and that library grows every single day. Of course, they now provide so much more than just box text-like descriptions, including the newest addition to dScryb that I am really excited to tell you guys about today, the Sonic Library. This thing has been a long time coming, and it is so cool. So sure, there are other soundscape libraries out there. Many of you are familiar with some of them, but none that are this good, in my opinion. I mean, check it out. You want to put your characters in a dark cave passage or an abandoned shack with a fireplace. Well, awesome. Now, with dScryb, you can not only get an amazingly written description of that location that you can read to your players to set the mood when they first enter, but with the click of a button, and at the same time you can even get the perfect sound to match that description. dScryb has teamed up with Michael Gelfi of the famous Gelfi Studios to bring you these soundscapes, and to date they already have almost 1,800 of them in the library, ready for you to use to take your game to like the next level of immersion. To get access, you'll need a composer level subscription. It's only a few bucks a month, and it gets you access to all the audio, yes, but also a compositions tool that lets you prep your game by searching, storing, and then playing the sounds that you want to play for your game that night, and even a web player that's available for free to your players, so that if you're playing together online with like a VTT or whatever, you can click play on your audio and they will hear it in real time. I love this feature. I feel like it really completes the whole set piece of creating the perfect environment to immerse your players in the world that you've so painstakingly and lovingly created for them. So to learn more, go to dScryb.com/D4. Please use that link so they know I sent you. And then just click on the sounds drop down in the top right corner. If you decide to purchase a subscription, whether a composer subscription or any other, be sure to use the code D4 at checkout and you'll save 10% on that subscription. Thanks, dScryb. Love you guys. Love this product. And let's jump into the build. All right. At level 1, for our starting class, yes, I am going to start Paladin. I wanted to start Pally for a couple of reasons. It gives us a nice support feature right away, but also there's the heavy armor and martial weapon proficiencies that are going to be very important for this build. As for our race, speaking of going back to my roots, yeah, we're going variant human today. There is a feat that we really want, and with all of the multi-classing that we're going to be doing here, those feats and ability score increases are going to be in very short supply. So getting a free one right at level 1 as a variant human is really important. And I'm going to take variant human over custom lineage because there aren't any half feats that I really want for this build, and we are going to be quite mad multiple ability score dependent, so I prefer the +1 to 2 ability scores that you get with variant human as opposed to the +2 to 1 with custom lineage. As for the free feat that we're going to take, I'm going to go with Great Weapon Master. So Great Weapon Master, it's very potent, it's fun, it's powerful. It gives us a +10 damage when we hit with a heavy weapon, among other things, but because of the -5 to hit penalty that we take when we use it, I don't usually start off with this feat until we get like ways to add more attacks and bump our hit chance. Fortunately for us, we're only making 1 attack per turn, and we will be getting some great ways to increase our hit chance very soon, so I think it makes sense starting off with it right at level 1 here on this character. As for our ability scores, I'm going to assume that we're taking the point buy method as always and recommend going with a 15 strength, taking a +1 there, a 15 charisma and taking our other +1 there, and then a 13 wisdom and yeah, a 12 constitution. Like I said, we are quite mad. Only a 12 constitution makes me a little nervous, especially since we don't, as a paladin, have proficiency in our constitution saving throws, and thus concentration checks. You could just take a 14 in charisma here, and then like a 13 con and a +1 for like a 14 constitution there, if you prefer. I really wanted to have a high charisma score on this character to make our support and spellcasting abilities a little stronger, since I really do imagine that outside of our Nova round we'll largely be playing a support and or controller role, but go ahead and shore up your constitution instead if you would prefer. As for our starting equipment, not going gold buy, just taking standard stuff here. Make sure you pick up a great sword or a maul, some chainmail armor, and I would even get a shield here. As for the weapon, yeah, great sword, maul, those are the highest damage weapons we can get at 2d6. Feel free to take a great axe instead at 1d12. The damage difference is only slightly less. But also, though, I think I would plan really on only using my weapon during my Nova round on this character. You know, pulling out this massively oversized Final Fantasy-esque sword or something, blow something up, then go back to my shield and probably just a free hand, casting spells and supporting my allies. Doing that will help me get hit a lot less, and thus hold on to my concentration more reliably, among other things. But then, as a Paladin 1, we get a couple of abilities. Divine Sense, first up, which tells us that 1 plus our charisma modifier times per day. With an action, we can detect any undead, fiends, or celestials that are within 60 feet of us, not behind total cover. It's somewhat useful once in a while. But then we get the very nice Lay on Hands that gives us 5 points per paladin level that we can use as an action to heal an ally for 1 hit point per point spent. We've got to be able to touch them. Or if we spend 5 points, we can cure a disease or poison. It's super efficient. You could bring an ally back from unconscious 5 times per day right at level 1 with this, right? If you only healed them for 1 hit point, which I generally recommend personally. And yeah, with 5 more points per paladin level, it scales really, really well too. Unfortunately, it's not going to scale all that well for us because at level 2, we are already starting our multi-class adventure. As much as I really wanted to get to Divine Smite, there are some other things that I absolutely have to do first if I truly want to stick to my self-imposed rule here of being a one-hit wonder and maximize my damage by our first damage report at level 6. And thus, at level 2, we're going to start on our Sorcerer journey. And as a Sorcerer 1, we get right away our Sorcerer subclass, our Sorceress origin. And I want to go with Divine Soul here. I think it makes the best fit for this Frankenstein of a character to try and keep some semblance of continuity between all the multiclassing, at least until it falls apart a little bit later. But yeah, for now, sure. I mean, paladins are generally religious folk. Not always, of course. You could certainly swear to an ideal instead of a deity. But yeah, I think for me, this character is going to be driven by the divine. So Divine Soul Sorcerers are a pretty small leap thematically. You draw on your arcane power from a divine source. But also, I think they do the most for us mechanically, both from a I need to hit really, really hard once in a while perspective and a after that I want to play a support character perspective. So yeah, for us, they're perfect. As for the thing that makes us great at hitting things really hard once in a while, we've got the Favorite of the Gods feature that Divine Souls get. This tells us that once per short rest, when we fail a saving throw or miss with an attack roll, and being allowed to wait until you know that you've missed here is really, really nice. But when we do miss, we can roll a 2d4 and add it to our attack roll. That's a +5 to hit on average, meaning that our -5 to hit penalty from Great Weapon Master is essentially negated when we get to use Favorite of the Gods. And that's wunderbar. As for the after that I want to play a support feature, as a Divine Soul Sorcerer, we get Divine Magic, which essentially gives us access to both the Cleric and Sorcerer spell lists, and that means really fantastic things for our ability to buff and heal, as well as blast and control. So, what spells should we be taking to help us with all of this? I'd say for cantrips, we ought to grab Guidance, as it's a very strong way to add a d4 to an ability check for ourselves or an ally. Nice support utility there. And then the all-important, for us, Booming Blade, or alternatively Green Flame Blade, or both. Both cantrips require us to make a weapon attack as part of the casting of the spell, and then do a little extra damage on a hit, after level 5 at least, plus either more damage if the enemy moves after being hit, in the case of Booming Blade, or more damage to another enemy standing right next to our target in the case of Green Flame Blade. I tend to lean towards Booming Blade since the bonus damage from it is thunder, which is less often resisted by enemies than Green Flame Blade's fire damage. But yeah, sure, take both and then you can alternate between them. As for first level spells, I mean, you kinda have to take Shield as it's such a strong reaction-based defensive option. But in addition to that, I'd say we ought to prioritize Bless, first of all. One of the best buffs in game. It gives you and 2 other allies a d4 to all of your attack and saving throw rolls, so long as you maintain concentration, and Healing Word, so you can heal an ally from range with simply your bonus action. We are a very happy level 2 character right now, with lots of nice support and damage capabilities. Yay us. At level 3, we would be a Sorcerer 2, and we get Font of Magic, our sorcery points. We get 1 sorcery point per sorcerer level. These reset on a long rest and can be used to either create more spell slots, and we can also cannibalize our spell slots to create more sorcery points. And then, of course, next level, we can use our sorcery points to fuel our meta magic. So yeah, at level 4, we'd be a Sorcerer 3 and we get meta magic. We get to take 2 meta magic options. These are all used to enhance our spells in a variety of ways. I love all of them, some more than others. Most prominently, of course, Quicken spell, which I take pretty much every time. This lets us cast a spell with a bonus action if it normally has a casting time of an action. It costs us 2 sorcery points, so it's not cheap. But then I think for our second option, I'm probably going with Seeking Spell on this character. Seeking Spell also costs us 2 sorcery points, so again, not cheap. But it tells us that if we make an attack roll with a spell and miss, we can spend 2 sorcery points and re-roll the attack. Now, our character is putting pretty much all of their damage eggs in one big bursty basket. It is imperative that we actually land that one big attack when we set it up and try to make it. So yeah, even though it would cost us more sorcery points than we even have currently, I'd keep this Seeking Spell in my back pocket to pull out just in case I either don't have Favored by the Gods available when I miss my one-hit wonder attack, or just in case that even Favored by the Gods isn't quite enough to help me hit. And fortunately, we could use both Quicken Spell and Seeking Spell on the same spell once we have enough sorcery points to do so, at least. You know, using 2 meta magic options on the same spell is typically prohibited, but Seeking Spell makes an exception. Oh, and just in case you doubt whether or not Seeking Spell would actually work on Booming Blade or Green Flame Blade because we're making a weapon attack, I humbly refer you to this tweet made by the esteemed Jeremy Crawford, confirming that it should. And if you disagree with everything that Jeremy Crawford says, then I don't know what to tell you. I still think it should work. We also do get 2nd level Sorcerer and Cleric spells here, and there's nothing that I would plan on using combat during our Nova round at least, but I would for sure consider Aid for some really nice support as it increases the maximum hit points of 3 party members and scales really nicely when you upcast it. Lesser Restoration is really great for curing lots of things. Misty Step, since teleportation is always nice to have. And probably for us, I think Mirror Image, which will help us stay alive and not lose our concentration, causing enemies to attack our illusory doppelgangers instead of us sometimes. So anyway, lots of good options. But at level 5, now that we've got our most important spells and meta magic options under our belt, it's time to multi-class yet again so that we can really get the most out of our one hit by level 6. Anybody have any guesses on where we're going next? If you said Cleric, you win. And yeah, totally. Clerics are yet another fairly easy multi-class transition here, right? We're sticking with the whole divine theme and just making minor adjustments and sidesteps into associated classes. As a Cleric 1, right at the beginning, we also get our Cleric subclass, our Divine Domain. And do you know what we're going with? I do. The Grave Cleric. Yeah, we are somehow affiliated with a god who watches over between the line of life and death. We are here both to ease the suffering of the dying, but also hurry along the dying of those who are otherwise deserving. As a Grave Cleric, we get a couple of features. Circle of Mortality. This tells us that when you would normally roll dice to heal an unconscious ally, you instead just heal them for the maximum amount, which is great if and when we're using spells to heal, in our case, or pour a healing potion down their throat, I suppose. We also get the Spare the Dying cantrip, which normally isn't all that amazing in my opinion, as it simply stabilizes a dying creature. I mean, it's better than nothing if you're out of other healing options, but for us, we can actually cast it as a bonus action from 30 feet instead of as an action with a touch. So yeah, that turns it into a pretty solid cantrip. Great to use in a pinch if you've got a dying ally, especially if they're kind of far away. Maybe you can't quite get to them on this round in order to use Lay on Hands, or maybe you're out of Lay on Hands points and spell slots, right? Great way to keep them from bleeding out. We also get Eyes of the Grave here, and this is essentially a less powerful version of the Paladin's Divine Sense, which we already have and wasn't all that great to begin with. Eyes of the Grave only works on undead and can be used Wisdom modifier times per day. We also get Cleric spells here, of course, and I'm gonna just say pick your favorites. I mean, there's nothing here that we didn't already have access to as a Divine Soul Sorcerer. So just keep in mind that the ones we take here will use our Wisdom modifier, so try to avoid things that are improved by your spellcasting stat if you can. I'd probably take Bless here as a Cleric spell, and then swap it out as a Sorcerer spell when you can for something else that benefits from a better spellcasting stat. So yeah, I mean, I guess I'd probably focus on stuff like Ceremony, Comprehend Languages, Detect Magic, Purify Food and Drink, like utility and ritual stuff, right? Don't forget that now that we're level 5, Booming Blade and Green Flame Blade do that 1d8 of damage on a hit to our initial target, right? But at level 6, we'd be a Cleric 2, and this is kind of where everything finally comes together for our one-hit wonder. Because we get Channel Divinity. All Clerics get Channel Divinity, which they can use once per short rest for 3 different things: to recover spell slots via Harness Divine Power, to turn undead as an action, forcing all undead who can see or hear you to make a Wisdom saving throw or spend a minute running away from you, and then a third use of Channel Divinity based on our Divine Domain. As a Grave Cleric, that means we get that amazing and fantastic ability, Path to the Grave. Path to the Grave tells us that as an action, we can curse a creature within 30 feet of us. They don't get to save against this. And then the next time that we or an ally hits them with an attack, they are vulnerable to all of that attack's damage. And that is, of course, amazing. In case you didn't know, in 5e, if you're vulnerable to something, it means you take double damage from it. And it is a very precious and difficult to find thing in D&D 5e. And yeah, this is even better than a critical hit, since a critical doubles all of the damage dice, but not any additional bonuses, like, say, for example, the plus 10 damage you're doing from Great Weapon Master or your ability score modifier, right? But if they're vulnerable to all of the damage from that attack, then all of the damage that we do is doubled, including those things, and thus we have our one-hit wonder. The problem, of course, is that it takes an action to use Path of the Grave, leaving us with nothing but our bonus action to try and attack them with. But oh, would you look at that? We have Quicken Spell and Booming Blade. So, at level 6, it's time for our first damage report. Let's talk about what combat looks like for us here. On round 1, I imagined that you'd want to cast Bless. It's not strictly necessary. You could just go Nova right away, which is cool. But we are pretending, at least, to be a support character here, so we should probably act like it. Bless is going to make things so much smoother for most, if not all, of our party now, since we can upcast Bless to affect more allies, and we do have 3rd level spell slots at the moment. It will also really help us ensure our big hit when we do go Nova, and that will happen, I'm assuming, on round 2. We simply run up to our primary target, use Path to the Grave with our action, and then quicken the Booming Blade or Green Flame Blade cantrip, making a weapon attack with our Greatsword or Maul. If we miss, we use Favored by the Gods to make sure that we hit. If we hit, we do 2d6 damage for our weapon, plus 1d8 for Booming Blade, plus 10 for Great Weapon Master, plus 3 for our Strength modifier, all doubled for a total of 4d6 plus 2d8 plus 26 damage. And thus, against an enemy with a 10 armor class, we would on average do 46 damage here, and against an enemy with a 15 armor class, it would be 37 damage on average. Alright, that's not amazing. Compared to other Nova builds that I've done to date at this level, this puts us at about kind of in the middle of tier 3. Check the video description for links to the spreadsheets that compare them all to one another. That's not terrible, but it's not amazing. Let me say this. If you're going to be stopping this campaign at level 6, or maybe you're like specifically playing a level 6 one-shot or something, we could have done better here by going Paladin 2 for Divine Smite, Cleric 2 for Path to the Grave, and Sorcerer 2, but then since we wouldn't have had meta magic at Sorcerer 2, and thus no Quicken Spell, we would forego Great Weapon Master as our free feat at level 1 and instead take the meta magic Adept feat and pick up Quicken Blade that way. Divine Smite's damage using a 3rd level spell slot would outweigh the damage from Great Weapon Master, especially if we're doubling it, and especially since we wouldn't suffer that -5 to hit penalty from Great Weapon Master, right? But for everyone else not stopping at level 6, going that route would make levels 7 and onward significantly worse during our Nova round, since it would be a minute before we picked up Great Weapon Master, and Metamagic Adept is slightly redundant if we're going to get 3 levels of Sorcerer, right? So I decided to build the way I did and be slightly less awesome at level 6, but amazing at level 7. And I mean, in the end, already by this point, we're still a pretty solid support and doing some respectable burst damage once per short rest. So yeah, I'm happy about where we're at. But yes, at level 7, this is where we finally have all of our best tools because, yeah, we're taking Paladin 2 here. And as such, we get, first of all, a fighting style. Honestly, if it were me playing this character in game, I'd probably go with the defense fighting style to just give myself a +1 to my armor class. But since I'm trying to maximize damage here, I guess I'll go with Great Weapon Fighting Style, even though it's pretty lame. It lets you re-roll dice when you roll a 1 or a 2 on your weapon damage specifically, if you're using a two-handed weapon. Typically, for greatsword users, that's an average of about 1.3 more damage per hit. But of course, if we're doubling it, thanks to Path to the Grave, for us that'd be 2.6. Still not amazing, but I'm trying to push things as far as I can on damage, so let's take it. The real reason we're in Pally 2, of course, is for the wonderful and beloved Divine Smite, which tells us that when we hit with a melee weapon attack, we can add 2d8 of radiant damage to the attack, plus 1d8 more for every spell slot above first that we spend on the smite, capping at 5d8 or a 4th level spell slot. It also does an extra 1d8 of damage against fiends and undead. And yes, of course, we would be doubling those dice if we are smiting a target who is cursed with Path to the Grave. Woo-hoo. We do get 1st level paladin spells here, don't forget. And again, I'm going to say, as I often will be on this build, pick your favorites. There's not really anything here that I want that we didn't already have access to before. The smite spells, Searing Smite, Thundering Smite, etc., I'd consider if they didn't require concentration. I can't imagine using one of these instead of Bless, honestly, especially with Great Weapon Master active, but they wouldn't be terrible to use if you were really confident that the enemy had a really low armor class, you're fighting some giant or something. Go ahead and just grab whatever you want here that you couldn't grab before. But at level 8, we're going back to Sorcerer, both to grab another sorcery point so that we could now either quicken Booming Blade twice per long rest, or if we really had to in a pinch, use Seeking Spell on our quickened spell Booming Blade to make sure that we didn't waste that Path to the Grave, right? And this essentially means that we have advantage on demand for our one big boom. Seeking Spell isn't technically and mathematically equivalent to advantage, but it's close enough that I will consider it as such for the sake of ease of number crunching. And I mean, don't forget that as painful as blowing all 4 of our sorcery points with one single attack would be, you can convert your spell slots into more sorcery points as a bonus action if you really need to. I mean, we do have the spell slots of a 7th level full caster right now, thanks to multi-classing rules, so hopefully we can spare a slot or 2 for some sorcery points if we need it. Anyway, as a sorcerer 4, we get an ability score increase or feat, finally. Stupid multi-classing. And yes, the best thing to do for our damage here will be to bump strength, taking it to an 18. Now, at level 9, you should probably stick with Sorcerer. It would mean more sorcery points, and of course, 3rd level Sorcerer and Cleric spells, right? Only a fool would start taking levels in another class right now, right? Right. So, let's go Bard. I've got good mechanical reasons for doing so, but the main ones won't come for a couple of levels. As a Bard 1, we get Bardic Inspiration, and you know, I took a lot of Bard levels in the build that I did just last week, so I'll try to keep things pretty high level as I go over these early Bard features, okay? Anyway, yes, Bardic Inspiration, fantastic. Charisma modifier times per day. We can give our allies a d6 to use on an attack, ability check, or saving throw in the next 10 minutes. Further bolstering our already pretty strong support capabilities. We also get Bard spells, of course, and I'm gonna say pick your favorites. I love Vicious Mockery and Dissonant Whispers, which are mostly unique to bards, but take whatever spells you think best round out your support and utility capabilities, I would say. All right, level 9, time for our next damage report. And since last check, we have added 1 to our strength modifier, picked up the fairly mediocre great weapon fighting style, given ourselves advantage on our one-hit wonder attack, basically, thanks to 4 sorcery points and seeking spell, and then, of course, added the almighty divine smite, which we could spend a 4th level spell slot on now for an additional 5d8 damage, which, of course, for us, on a Path to the Grave cursed target would be 10d8 more damage. Yippee! And so, against an enemy with a 10 armor class here, we would on average do 105 damage during our Nova round, and against an enemy with a 16 armor class, it would be 99, so close to 100. All right, now we're talking. This is kind of the pinnacle of our career a little bit, damage-wise here. We've broken the Centennial Barrier, and we are sort of kind of more bottom half of tier 2 compared to other Nova damage builds at this level that I've done to date, and that's all still with just 1 single attack. Again, leaving us with most of our spell slots to be a really great support and utility character outside of our burst round, and I love it. All right. At level 10, we would be a Bard 2, and we get Jack of all trades. This lets us add half of our proficiency bonus to any ability check we make that doesn't already add our proficiency bonus, and that's really awesome. And we also get Song of Rest. This lets us add a little extra healing, d6, to our party members who are spending hit dice to heal during a short rest. At level 11, we would be a Bard 3, and that means we get our Bard College, our Bard subclass. And we are going, as I bet some of you have probably guessed, with the College of Whispers. And yeah, that's kind of the main reason I wanted to go Bard, in addition to the fun utility and support options it gave us. This is a lovely subclass, which, honestly, of all the Bard subclasses, probably pairs best with a character who is divinely inspired, but also very interested in death, right? Well, okay, fine, maybe College of Spirits would have been better, but this is a close second. And mechanically superior for our burst damage purposes. First up, as a Whispers Bard, we get Words of Terror, which is a cool and flavorful ability. It requires us to spend at least 1 minute talking to someone, after which they have to make a wisdom save or be frightened of us for an hour, or until they or their allies are attacked or damaged. Cool and fun, especially for out-of-combat purposes, no question. But the main reason we're here, of course, is for the Psychic Blades feature that Whispers Bards get. This tells us that once per round, on our turn, when we hit with a weapon attack, we can spend a use of our Bardic Inspiration to do an extra 2d6 of damage on the attack, which for us, of course, means 4d6 against a cursed Path to the Grave target, right? Now, we do also get 2nd level Bard spells here. I'm going to say pick your favorites, focused on utility and support options that you don't already have. Very importantly, don't forget that Booming Blade and Green Flame Blade now do 2d8 damage on a hit. That's a very nice. At level 12, we would be a Bard 4. And we get another ability score increase or feat. I think I gotta cap my strength score here and bump it up to 20 now. You know, at least if I'm truly trying to maximize my damage. You might opt instead to go Resilient Constitution to really help you with your Constitution saves and concentration checks. And if you did, I wouldn't blame you in the slightest. At level 13, we would be a Bard 5. And first up, our Bardic Inspiration goes up to a D8, and we get Font of Inspiration, letting us get our Bardic Inspiration uses back on a short rest now instead of a long rest, which is so much better. That makes me very happy. Also, our Psychic Blades damage bumps to 3d6 here, which is a welcome little increase. And then finally, we get 3rd level Bard spells. And honestly, Bards have access to some of the most powerful 3rd level spells in the game. I mean, for utility, you've got Catnap for a 10-minute short rest once per day, Tiny Hut for a really secure place to take a long rest, among other things. For control, we've got Fear and Hypnotic Pattern and Slow, the trifecta of awesome 3rd level control spells. Now, all of those require concentration, sure, but like if somebody else in the party has access to and is using Bless, I would absolutely be planning on using one of these for my concentration. And then, for support, we've got Motivational Speech, for some nice temporary hit points and other buffs. So yeah, pick your favorites here and enjoy having too many good ones to choose from, or maybe bemoan that fact, I suppose. But at level 13, it is time for our next damage report. And since last checked, we've now added 3d6 damage to our one-hit wonder, thanks to Psychic Blades, which would translate to 66, of course, as well as capped our strength score, seen a bump of another 1d8 on Booming Blade, and picked up a lot of really nice utility, support, and control options. But against an enemy with a 10 armor class here during our Nova round, we would do on average 140 damage. And against a 17 armor class, it would be 135 damage on average. And while that is a nice little increase, 40% or so since last check, we have definitely started to plateau a bit compared to other Nova builds at this level, landing us back more kind of in the middle of tier 3 again. It is really hard to keep up with those other Nova builds that are getting lots of attacks per round. But hey, we are conserving so many more resources than the vast majority of them, and are as good, if not better, support and utility than most, if not all of them. I love us. Alright, at level 14, there are a lot of paths to consider as to where we should go from here. More bards means better bard spells, basically. I mean, Mantle of Whispers as a Whispers bard is cool, but the higher level spells would be the biggest draw for staying bard. We could go with more paladin levels, but keep in mind that we can only use Channel Divinity once per short rest, regardless of whether we're using Channel Divinity as a cleric or as a paladin, if we're multi-classed into each. So our paladin oath would be largely wasted. And I mean, we specifically don't want extra attack from paladin if we're sticking with our one-hit wonder character concept. So the main draw for more paladin would be Aura of Protection, and as amazing as that feature is, it's also 4 levels away. We could go more cleric levels to get Channel Divinity twice per short rest, which would be great. I'd love having Path to the Grave more than once per short rest, but that comes at cleric 6. That's also 4 levels away, and in the meantime, we'd basically just be getting a bunch of cleric spells that we would need to use our wisdom modifier for, spells that as a Divine Soul sorcerer we could just grab with more sorcerer levels instead, and also get sorcerer spells and more sorcery points. So yeah, let's go back to sorcerer here, meaning that we would be a sorcerer 5, and that means 3rd level sorcerer and cleric spells. And yeah, I mean, let's be honest, I don't know if I can truly call myself a support character if I don't have Revivify until level 14. I'm sure if I were playing this character in game, I probably would have gone Sorcerer 5 before taking Bard levels at least. I mean, you've got to have a resurrection option for your party, right? Just in case. And also, yeah, I mean, hey, grab Fireball. Sometimes you just need to do some decent damage to a lot of enemies, especially if we don't have any other characters that are doing some decent AoE damage on demand. I think I would have gone Sorcerer 5 a while ago, but we're here now. We're happy about it. But at level 15, we're going Warlock. Did I just say we were going back to Sorcerer? We did, for 1 level. Psych! Again, as always, if this ridiculous aberration of multiclassing is too much for you or your DM to handle, it's okay. Don't do it. Just get yourself to Pally 2 and then go back to Sorcerer for the rest of the way. Or heck, I mean, you might even consider going Fighter for action surge and maybe some Battle Master maneuvers. But as for me and my house, we are choosing Warlock. Story-wise, I don't know why. You tell me. I no longer have control over this thing. Turns out our deity is now communicating with us via a genie, I guess? Because, yes, at Warlock 1, we get our Warlock subclass, our otherworldly patron, and we're going with my favorite, not Hexblade, Genie. Because, first of all, that will give us the Genie's Vessel feature, which tells us that once per day, we can enter our little lamp or ring or whatever it is that we're using for our Genie's Vessel, and can comfortably stay inside for a number of hours equal to 2 times our proficiency bonus, which means 10 hours for us right now. Plenty of time for a long rest if need be. It makes for a pretty great long-term storage facility bank vault if we need it, or if we just really need to hide for some reason. Ooh, Ooh, here's something that I would love to hear in the comments. Tell me your favorite story from when someone at your table used their genie's vessel for some fantastic shenanigans. Get inside your ring and then have someone gift it to a bad guy, and then we pop out while they're sleeping. Give your lamp to a flying ally to hold while you jump inside and float safely to the ground. I'm sure you guys could do way better than that. Comments, please. But yes, the main reason that we wanted to go genie was for Genie's Wrath, which lets us do an extra bit of damage equal to our proficiency bonus once per turn, which we get to double, of course, on a cursed target, and that means a 10 flat damage at this level. It's not bad. We do get first level Warlock spells here, and again, pick your favorites. You might want Eldritch Blast if you're okay making non-one-hit wonder attacks outside of your Nova round, especially if you need a decent ranged option. Aside from that, maybe grab Armor of Agathis. Have fun with it. At level 16, we would be a Warlock 2, and we get Eldritch Invocations. I love all of them. They buff us in a variety of fantastic ways. I'd be sure to grab Eldritch Mind here, which would give us advantage on our concentration checks. Very handy indeed, especially for our non-constitution proficient save selves. As for the second one we get, I'd say pick your favorite. If you plan on using Eldritch Blast, sure, Agonizing Blast and or Repelling Blast are great. Otherwise, I'd maybe go with something that gives us some nice utility, I think. Devil's Sight, maybe, since we are variant human after all and never got dark vision. Anyway, lots of good ones to choose from. But finally, for us, at level 17, we would be a Warlock 3. That means second level spells, pick your favorites. Nothing I'd plan on using here in combat, but probably want to focus on utility and control, and just having 2 second level spell slots that reset on a short rest in addition to all of our other spell slots, pretty nice. And then we also get our Pact Boon, and I'm gonna go, as I very often do, with Pact of the Chain. I know, I keep going Chain, but Pact of the Chain is so good because it lets us summon a familiar a la the Find Familiar spell, but our familiars as a Pact of the Chain Warlock are way better than anybody else's familiars because many of them can go invisible, meaning that on their turn they can take the help action and still stay invisible, thus staying a lot safer than most familiars do, and thus giving us true advantage on our one big hit, even letting us save the Seeking spell to use if we still miss even with advantage, making it kinda sorta function like Elven Accuracy, letting us roll up to 3d20s if we need them, and have the sorcery points for it. And that's fantastic. Not just to help us hit, but also to increase our chances at scoring a critical hit, right? Because if we crit on a target who is vulnerable to all of our attacks' damage, boy howdy. Boy howdy. Finally, don't forget, at level 17, our Booming Blade and Green Flame Blade would do 3d8 damage on a hit. And that brings us to our final damage report. Since last check, we've added 6 more now flat damage to our one-hit wonder attack, thanks to Genie's Wrath. That would double to 12, right? Plus added another d8 thanks to Booming Blade scaling. We've given ourselves true advantage now with our familiar, and added a bunch of utility, a strong area of effect damage option, a little defensiveness, and better support. We are a one-hit wonder god. And against an enemy with a 10 armor class, on average during our Nova round here, we would do 167 damage. And against an 18 armor class, it would be barely less, 165. And so, sure, while we've continued to plateau compared to other Nova builds at this level, we're still kind of in the middle of tier 3 by comparison, there are 2 important things to note. 1, our damage curve is a lot better than most Nova builds, especially by this level, thanks to all of those nice plus to hit bonuses that we can take advantage of, and the advantage and pseudo advantage that we have. So that's really nice, but also, 2, again, we're doing all of this with one single attack. One attack. Kaboom! So cool. All right, time for final thoughts. The tier score for this character, if you take the damage that they were doing at all of the armor classes that we calculate for at each of the 4 damage reports and just average it all into one big number, we end up with a 103. And this puts them right at the very top of tier 3 compared to all other Nova builds I've done to date. And seriously, for only spending one single 4th level spell slot for a Divine Smite in order to do this much damage in a round. That's pretty awesome. Sure, we're casting Bless as well, but as a support character, you'd want to be doing that anyway, and your party is going to love you for it. All of those other juicy and delicious spell slots you have access to, you can use to heal, buff, resurrect, and just generally really improve the quality of life of all of your allies in a myriad of ways. Not to mention, heck, if you really need or want to, sure, go ahead and throw out a fireball once in a while. And don't forget that you can still do some pretty decent, like, mini burst damage from time to time if need be. On your turn, simply cast Booming Blade as your action if your party isn't needing anything else from you at the moment. And yeah, by the end here especially, you could throw out a Smite, a Psychic Blades, Genie's Wrath, all piled on that one single attack for a pretty decent little mini burst damage round once in a while if need be. I love how fun and diverse this character would be to play in game and during combat, and mixing things up that you do every single turn. And I especially love the idea of being this helpful, supportive, makes everyone better party member who just once in a while gets to call down a tactical nuke on somebody. So much fun. So that's the build for the week. I think we were a little short today. You might have wanted to just listen to me on regular speed, or just 1.5 instead of 2 times. But I hope you enjoyed it. I had a blast with this character. I would love to play them in game, as I would with so many others. But anyway, I love you guys. Thank you so much for all that you do for me, for this channel. I hope that you'll check out the other content in the channel if you're not in the habit of doing so. But more importantly, I hope you have a really great day today and a fantastic week, and that you stay safe, and that you be good, and that you be kind, and that you're happy. And that I see you again really soon. But until then, take care. And you don't mean to be cruel. You never even knew about the heartache I've been going through. Well, I'm trying to forget you, girl, but it's just so hard to do. Every time you do that thing you do. Bum, 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 bum. I've been trying to think of good one-hit wonders to sing, but the one that comes to mind most prevalently is that song from the movie The Wonders, which is a movie about a band that is a one-hit wonder from the 90s. I don't know how many of you seen it. It's actually a really good show. Tom Hanks, it's kind of some cool insight into the music industry and artists trying to be artists, to juggle that challenge of trying to be an artist and trying to make a living. And anyway, what's your favorite one-hit wonder? Inquiring minds want to know. The only other one that I could really think of prominently was Never Gonna Give You Up, Never Gonna Let You Down, Never Gonna Run Around and Rick Rolled. La 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 la. Hey, Mike, you're doing pretty good today. Not creeping on me at all. Don't say a couple of nice features, because the second one isn't great. Now the mic is sagging. Man, you just cannot be happy. Well, don't even say that. Don't say that. Oops. No! Stop it. Oh. I'm thirsty. I forgot my water. Babe. So typical. Jarbard subclass. What was that? Well, don't even say that. She didn't hear me. And then I seriously went and got a glass of water and filled it up. And then I forgot to bring it in here because I had to pee. And now I'm doubly sad. Pretty decent little Murney. Murney?